Mr. Ben,
How are you doing, Tim?
very good. You?
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Even just to have a good conversation with you, man.
When did we first meet? Can you remember?
Do you know what? I was digging through some pictures last night, actually. Um,
Not of the
and
karaoke, was it?
yeah, and it was actually there was a picture of me and you at the table in Travis's Country Club in Little Rock in Arkansas, and I just remember, and I look, I'm in a white shirt. I just like go into the local country club, and you are sat on the opposite side of the table to me, and I just remember that was the proper time where we kind of spent a bit of time together. But we met in 2000, maybe 15 or 14. That is now what's called a long time ago.
And I'm excited to talk to you, Ben. Like obviously because we know each other, mates as well. But I think there's quite a few things I want to touch on. I really want to know about the 10x. I've obviously been watching what you're doing. I've seen, I'm going to ask you about it. I've seen some really good clients come and do this stuff with you, which I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Like this must be a good experience to get some. I don't mean big names as in, you know, the name is important, but people that are doing cool things in the world. I'm also really interested about the experience we went through as coachees or as clients, I guess we would call it originally. For me, I still look back at coaching with Glenn, and I think there's probably only like one other coach that I've ever worked with, and I didn't actually work with him directly, that I think was as good as Glenn was. Now maybe this is rose tinted, I don't know. You can correct me as we go, but it's like I look back now and I'm like, whoa, we lucked out. Now, by the way, we also know that Glenn was good at selling and good at, you know, getting you to invest in him. But I mean, I learned a lot from that, so I'm really interested in talking about that. Obviously, your move to Dubai as well. So, um, you tell me about when you started. How did you start working with Glenn, and like your experience of coaching, both with Glenn, but I know you had done stuff before and I hadn't. So, how did that all happen?
Yeah, that's really it's good. It's a good actually a good story about how you end up working with mentors. Like I was working with a guy called Paul Moore. Paul was, and I've invested in Paul
You did some
since.
good stuff with Dax as well, didn't you, before Glenn?
Yeah, I did Paul Moore with Dax. I've had mentors since I was really young, and I remember that Paul did a podcast with Glenn, and Glenn was like this webinar guy, and he was like, how to make money through webinars. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a webinar was still a new thing in the fitness world. And I clicked on his profile and took an instant dislike to him because he was a cat guy. And Glenn and
I
Tim will know
did not
this
remember this.
because me and Tim are dog guys. And I was like, oh, who's this arsehole? And anyway, I took an instant dislike to him, but I really, really liked his content. And he was like doing things that people just were not doing at the time. Anyway, so I messaged him, and he had a really different tone to anyone I'd ever messaged before. And I was like, what are your credentials? And he said, do you want credentials or do you want to make a multi six figure business? And I was like, God, this guy is, high on his own supply. But even though I didn't like him, like, no, I didn't. I was like, oh, I didn't. This guy feels very strange, but there was this pull to work with him, and yeah, it was interesting. I don't know if you had the same thing, but he was like, and it was actually another mentor that shared this with me is that you don't, you'll buy from people you like, know, and trust until there's one person with the one who solves the one problem that you have, and I was like, yeah, that is
What
so
was your
true.
problem at that point, do you think, then? Like, what were you trying to solve by hiring? And we're
Oh,
talking
lead
about Glenn because we
generation.
both worked with him.
Yeah, lead generation. I was filling my gym with hustle. I had a gym. I had a bricks and mortar gym, and I used to do networking. I used to go, just hustle tactics to fill a gym, and I knew that that wasn't sustainable. And we were also doing super low tickets, so I wanted to raise my prices. I could see other people in the industry charging these high prices, and I just couldn't understand the mechanisms to get there. At that time, I was 20. 324 at the time. And I was like, how do people charge all these 3-5k prices for training people? It blew my mind because I heard about people like Lazo Freeman, people like John Pierre de Villiers charging 25 grand, Dax Moy charging 20 plus grand, and I was like, how do you get there? But I just didn't understand the mechanics. And then there was this guy that showed up and he kind of had the answers to that, and that was very, very appealing to me.
I
Great question. It's really interesting.
I talk to my clients as well, like about how this happened from my perspective, and I can't remember how the algorithm exactly worked, but it was different then than it is now. And either I liked a post that Lazo shared of his, or Lazo commented on it, or Lazo liked it, and then it showed up on my feed, because in the old days in Facebook, you would see that, even people that you weren't connected with. And I can't remember where this was in the sequence, but I was talking to my then missus and I was like, I need to pay him money to understand how he's made me want to pay him money. And she was like, that makes no sense. And I was like, it does to me. And she's like, no, it doesn't. Well, she didn't say it like that because she was Latvian and not a man, but that's what she was saying. It's like, it doesn't, she couldn't get her head around it. I was like, she's like, well, but what are you going to do? And I was like, I need to know how he's made me want to spend this money with him, because there was something that he did. Now, the first thing that I was pointing out was the idea of like understanding the problem in someone's mind as it is that day. Like, what are they waking up in the morning thinking about? And I still to this day can't remember what the post even was, but it was maybe a day or two before I was this exact narrative, and it was only one paragraph. And I liked it because it was some random dude that I didn't know. I think it was probably because Lazo was connected. We both knew Lazo. And I liked it. And then, of course, someone pops into my inbox. This was, by the way, if anyone's listening, this was the old days. That wasn't the norm. Like, it wasn't things that lots of people were doing. And then I don't even remember what happened between popping into my inbox and me giving him some money. But there was a lot of salesmanship with it, because I remember there was a gap. I think we had 2 calls, and I remember him calling me out on the second one where I said something like, oh, I'm going to come back in September because people don't buy fitness in August. And I can't, and he just called me out, and I don't know, if I say I don't know what it was, he just knew what to say. And what he said to me was correct. And I had no way of arguing with that, because I'm like, in my head I was like, I fucking know he's right. And then I joined, and you were there was a few other people at first as well. What was your experience like with different, maybe not names of coaches, but what did you learn from these guys at the beginning?
Oh, it's really, really, because I can almost map. I was going to do this. I actually have done it. I've written out all my coaches I've had, and the bill. That was interesting. The total bill was really interesting. And when I was working with Paul helped me build a boot camp, and he helped me with I would say create an overnight success. I paid him. 30 days later, I had a $3,000 a month boot camp. It was a dream, when I was working 1 hour a morning, and then I was going and sitting in Costa drinking coffee for the rest of my day, reading books. And so I literally had an ideal life for me. So I went from a 10-hour a day lecturing job to 1 hour of boot camp in the morning, 3 times a week. It's like mind blowing. What a great business model. And that gave me so much free time. And with that free time, I was just really starting to get into business. And then that's when I met Glenn. And Glenn taught me to sell. Glenn taught me how to find someone's problem and put a value to it. And then so you were never really selling the thing, you were selling the solution to the problem. So I took that to its absolute extreme. I think to the actual extreme of what I could throttle it to, where I sold a 12-week transformation for 12 grand to somebody who was 6 stone overweight, and his business all his business debt would have been passed over to his kids if he died. So when I was selling to the problem, he had a multi-million-dollar problem if he died, and he believed he was going to die. So I said, well, actually, I don't do personal training anymore. If you wanted to do this, it'd be about 12 grand. And he said, yeah, no problem. And he paid me. So that was like the absolute pinnacle of what I believed to be possible. And I was like, after delivering that, I was like, I enjoyed the coaching way more than the actual training, because I used to learn so much
Can you
from these.
explain the difference?
Yeah, sorry, I think that's a really good distinction. Um, Training for me is training someone in a gym. Even if I'm coaching whilst I'm in the gym, I think that there is a distinct difference between sitting like this with somebody over Zoom or in a consultation room versus being on a gym floor training them and getting them to focus on their form. And I quickly realised that my master skill wasn't training people; it was actually sitting and listening to them or coaching them. And I also had a belief that fitness was capped. There was only a certain amount you could charge for fitness in my area. You know, I did really well charging what I did. But when I asked for bigger fees for coaching, people just said, yeah. And actually what was interesting, Tim, and this is something that you might be, I think I might have even had this advice from you, is that when I got rid of fitness from my coaching offer, because originally it was personal training 3 times a week, and I would have one coaching session with them, and I was charging 5 to 7 grand for that for 12 weeks. When I got rid of the fitness, my prices went up, and people had no comparison. They didn't say, "Oh, I can pay my local PT £1,000." They just went, "This is something totally different," and that's when my fees went up to like 15, 20, 25,000. And it felt easier because I wasn't trying to compete with a much cheaper solution. So when I became a full-time coach, then I would start to look for coaches, and Dax Moy was one of these guys. Dax was incredible in the way that he taught coaching, and the way that he educated trainers was just so different. It was very individual, very authentic. And I went on Dax's Guru project in Thailand, which was like a 10-day retreat. That was life-changing.
Mm.
And then I also worked with who you worked with as well, Tim, Travis Sago. Travis was life-changing, but not just about how he thought. He just has so many other things that he would help you think differently. And the big thing I got from all of these is like the way I coach now, I just do it how I want to do it. Like you said I was doing cool things with some good people. Like the other week, I met Ollie Ollerton. Ollie's a big name in the kind of the TV world, and I said, "Oh, do you know what, Ollie? I don't want to do a coaching session over Zoom or in a cafe. Let's go and do it in the desert." So he got his like ATV, and we went and did a coaching session for 3 hours in the middle of the desert with his wife and him, and that was a 10x coaching session. And I look back and I was like, I'm so glad I did that, because I enjoy that coaching session, and I was 10 times better than I would have been like doing it over Zoom. So it's like the way I've built my coaching business off the back of that is like I just do it the way I want to do it. I really just create experiences and coaching packages that I'd enjoy delivering. That's why I find my business like really fun now. But yeah, I definitely got that from the mixture of Glenn, Travis, Dax. They all designed their businesses in a way that they enjoyed. Like, remember Tim and I, we used to spend pretty much the whole of Tuesday, wasn't it? It was the whole of Tuesday on a call. It was 9 till 2, and I think I made more money in that time, 9 till 2, than any other day. I pretty much didn't have to work for the rest of the week. And that was all Glenn's design, because he just wanted to do work on a Tuesday.
Do you know what, the example that I used is, I remember, and hopefully this makes sense, but well, it will to you, I suspect. I joined a mentorship program. Mentorship, I don't know if you'd call it a mentorship even, to be honest. Like it was like $500 a month. There was a lot of people in there. This guy is a genius, clearly. And when I say a big name, I mean a very, very, very big name. So you come into his call, and is this conscious? Is this not conscious? Is it that I've got 50, 100 people on this call, and if people want to speak to me, I've only got 3 hours? And the guy gave a lot of his time, and I mean a lot of his time. Like, I wondered, like, why is he doing this? Because he clearly makes a lot of money elsewhere. He clearly loves doing it. So the value was really good. But one thing that I noticed was different with him, looking back, with Glenn, and one other coach I used to go on these calls. When I was in traffic and funnels, the higher level, I would go on the lower level calls. I never asked any questions. I just wanted to hear this guy, Matt, coach. because he was so good. And the thing that I noticed the difference with Matt is he almost never answered a question when a question was thrown at him. I don't think I ever heard him just give an answer. And he always spent a couple of minutes at least actually asking, like, clarifying questions. Asking questions where it's like the person says this is the problem. Matt will ask some questions and then we realise that that's really not the problem, it's this.
Yeah.
And I've only ever really felt that. And by the way, I would, for instance, Travis, I think he's a genius, but that wasn't Travis's wheelhouse. It wasn't what he was there to do. He wasn't there as like someone who like creates shifts. He would be like, this is the question, this is the answer. And it's not that he probably didn't ask clarifying questions, but what I remember with Glenn and what I've always tried to model is I don't generally answer a question until I, number one, understand what's actually being asked, but more to the point, understand, is this even the right question to ask? And that was something that I look back and I remember Glenn being very good at it. I don't think I realised at the time until later when I have other mentors. It's like, it was a bit frustrating almost to hear it, and I was like, it's not the problem. Why are you answering this question? It's not the problem. And Matt, this guy, Matt Green, was incredible at it. He was teaching sales as well. It was a sales workshop. People would come on, they'd ask a question, and then he'd ask like a few questions for like 5 minutes, and then they'd be in a totally different wheelhouse, and then the person would actually get their problem fixed. And that's something that I remember from Glenn, and I really rated him for it, and I learned a lot from him on that as an actual coach as well. Glenn was great at selling, and do you know what? I'm going to fanboy over him. Incredible marketer. Incredible salesperson, but really good coach as well.
Yeah, I like what you said, because I think that's your original come from is like diagnose the problem. Like that's what I think a lot of people don't really like. My opinion about the coaching industry is a lot of people don't coach; they just tell people what to do. And
would you differentiate consulting and coaching?
Yeah, so I've got a nice little definition. It's obviously there's grey in between. Like, therapy heals the past, mentoring teaches principles, coaching creates the future, and consulting is about bringing aspects of someone's business together in a line that makes it work better. So, like this morning, for example, I had a lady I'm coaching. She's phenomenal brand specialist, and she kind of gave me all these things on a list of like what she wanted to talk about on the call, and I just totally didn't answer any of those problems, and I voice note in the back saying I don't think this is the actual issue. I think the business model is the issue. I said, whilst you've got this business model, you're always going to be selling all the time, and you've got no back end. And she just messaged me back. She was like, "Oh my God, you're so right." And I think that's the difference, is that sometimes instead of trying to diagnose and go through all the things that she's trying to, she's sent me a list of problems or a list of things that she's trying to achieve, and I'm like, actually, this doesn't feel like the right thing. Sometimes you have to fix the underlying business model. And I think some coaches, like what I call pure coaches, don't do that. And equally, some consultants don't have the know-how to get into those sort of things. I think coming from a gym background really helped, because the gym model is such a powerful model. Like, I think if you look at Alex Hormozy now, the reason he's so prolific is that he's basically just teaching what he taught in what's the original Gym Launch. He's teaching what he produced in Gym Launch to other businesses so they run better like his business did. And having read all of his books, listened to all his stuff, he's still just doing the same thing, but he's just doing it in a different, more valuable position now. And I think that so many of the businesses that I work with, when I teach them stuff that I used in the gym, they go really well. And to help them do that, sometimes I mentor them, sometimes I coach them, and sometimes I never do therapy. I bring therapists into my programs, or I'll recommend, like, I don't know about you, I just say, have you got a therapist, and refer to a therapist. But I think that's my distinction anyway. That's my difference. What's your opinion of that?
Yeah, agree? I mean, I guess the question back would be, and I will give you, like, are you consciously wearing all of these hats at different times, or is it just whatever seems and feels right? Is that how you would approach these, or is it client by client? Is it what the person's buying? Because I do think that there's a skill set in it, because I think I'm hearing you right. It's like you can't just always like diet. You actually have to have some substance. Like it can't just all
Yeah,
be like the problem is inside, which to be honest, a lot of it is. Like that is the challenge, is the person. Like I think Glenn used to say this, and I stole it. Like we're always the limitations to our business, but at the same time, you can't just keep having to meditate on it. Like there needs to be some actual things that you go and do. Like I think that's what Glenn was good at, because I think looking
yeah,
back, he coached us, but then he was good at teaching like lead generation, sales. There was still strategy within there, and I think that that's something I've not found before, like or since I guess as well. So like do you think you just have enough experience now to kind of know which hat to put on?
yeah. This is how crazy. I was actually thinking this same thought this morning, because I just gave this woman just like this kind of download saying, "This is what I think the problem is." I said, "You've sent me a load of this stuff. This is exactly what I think it is." And as I play, sent the voice note, I did actually think to myself, did she need a coach then? Did I need to listen to her and extract a little bit more, or just go in as a bulldozer and say, no, I think this is the problem? And her reply was, yeah, do you know what? You're absolutely right. And I was like, you got heuristics, and it's like, the heuristics of seeing all this stuff in the past. So I've experienced this a lot of times. But there's what's been interesting actually. I've got a partnership with a coaching app. So I'm currently doing a partnership with a company called Kaya, and it's a companion app which will help you with your thinking. And there's a reason why I'm sharing this, because when I saw all of the vibes that you would have, the person that you spoke to, the vibe of the AI, I just said to the team, I was like, this just sounds like a coach. You are essentially Kaya as a coach, but don't call it a coach. It's a mentor, it's a friend, it's a strategist, it's a thought partner, it's a challenger, it's a creative, it's all these things. And they were like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I said, they're all coaching come from. So what you could do is model it as a coach. And what was really interesting is like how to train an AI to do that. And one of the first things I think that we came up with is that in the first like 3 to 5 questions, you're asking questions that work out which kind of hat you need to wear. So I think this is what a good coach can do in the first, say, 3 to 5 questions, or even just how you come on the call. The heuristics that you have, that kind of rule of thumb, or that experience, wisdom, helps you select that really quickly. And I think that people say it's a gut feel, some people say it's like experience, but the better you are at coaching, the faster you can calibrate which of those hats you're going to wear. And I think, again, go back to Glenn, he was incredible at doing that. He knew exactly. It was almost like there was a couple of times I reached out to him and said, listen, I really need your help. And he came on and he gave me what I would call like a Sistine Chapel of coaching sessions, where it was, he listened, he challenged, he gave me a strategy. And I really, really valued that. That was really powerful for me.
Do you know, sometimes I used to like have to sort of pinch myself, like this dude's like 10, 15 years younger than me, or however old he was at the time, maybe 10 years, 12 years younger than me. And I'm like that's like looking back to when I started working with Glenn at 37, when he was 25 maybe, or whatever. I was like, shit, I know I'm older than you, but it's like, bloody hell, what I was like at 25 and what he was. I know it blew up a little bit, but that I was always in awe of that, like how good
Yeah.
he was. I'm curious, Ben, because of what you just said there, do you think that an AI can coach people?
Oh God, that's such a good question. I don't know. I'm really curious. There is something about a person to person conversation where you've got someone like me or someone like you with lots of experience, you can read people,
But
that's going to take a long.
I think AI could be trained eventually, by the way, I'm no expert, I think it could be trained to be able to pick up on what me and you pick up on. Tonality, yeah, yes. Just words, maybe, like whatever it is that you pick up on if you break it down, the way they look, all of this stuff. But I'm more curious is like, would it work?
Yeah. So I think there's two answers to that. Yes, and soon. Because like some coaching, or it's called this coaching, is about good questions, and actually just providing good questions. So like I built a GPT because I worked with Ben Hardy for the last two plus years, and Ben was just amazing at creating a Friday set of questions. Every Friday he sent you an email and it has good questions in there, and I was just like, these are such good questions, and they focus my attention on the right things. I feel good when I've done the work, and it often my strategy improved. And I was like, right, okay, what happens if I could build a GPT that just generated good questions that helped me? So I built one, and my clients use it, and it's really good. And it just, you write the word Tuesday in there, and it gives you good questions on a Tuesday. And if you call coaching good questions, asking good questions, yes, it's coaching. But the adaptive, intuitive, felt sense of coaching, where you're really getting into something and you're really slow with someone and you silence, maybe that's going to take a long time.
My contention is, would someone react in the same way to what they know in the end is a machine? Like, and my contention is no. Even if you read, by the way, we're going to get too much in the weeds, but I don't mind these kind of conversations. Even if you read something as simple as Cialdini's book and the law of consistency, like one of the reasons why people, when you're coaching them, you ask them and you get clarifying questions and you're like, is there any reason you can't do that? Is because they've said it to another human being that they will do this thing. And so then it's like they're less likely to not do it. Doesn't mean that they always will do it, but they're less likely to because they've said to, and this is in sales as well, the law of consistency. So as an example, I could say something like in a sales call, what kind of client would you be for me? And they'll look at me like a bit surprised often. And they'll say, and I was like, well, are you committed? Yes. Sure. Are you accountable? Yeah. Do you take action? And they're like, yes, yes, yes to all of that. And so then when I close them at the end and I say, and this is for people who are committed, take action and accountable, there's, whether they are aware of this or not, they've told another human being that they are this thing. So then when you ask them the question at this point, the likelihood is their brains will want to stick with what they said they are.
Yeah.
You don't even need to challenge it often. It's probably a little bit more trickery, pokery, fuckery than them going no and then you having to go, you said earlier on that you were accountable. Like, that's a bit fucking low conscious. I'm not saying it's not a thing that people could do. And so then I'm like, well, are there so many aspects with coaching where it's because a human being has asked you something and you've said to a human being that I'm going to do this? Would we ever react the same way to an AI? And I don't know if we would.
I actually I thought a lot about this. I think people are being more honest with AI than they would be another human. I think that there's less judgment. So that I think that they will write. Like, I was speaking to a good friend of mine, conscious guy, and he said chat. He calls it chat, and he said chat knows more about me than anyone else in the world.
But is that but that's not a good thing, surely, because the fact is, if you say things to someone as a human being, and it's something that you don't like about yourself or you've done or you're not proud about yourself, that in essence saying that to someone is very, without getting too woo-woo, is very healing. Like, there's a reason. I did something with a client once where I had this done to me with me, but I did it in Malta where I got one of my clients and we wrote down all of the things, this was over about a day and a half, all of the things that he disliked about himself the most. And wrote on there, no one knows who this client is, wrote on there all the things that he's done in his life, which are the things that he has the most shame around. And one of them like, I'm, number one, I wouldn't show this to someone, right? But number two, I think I've got empathy. I'm reasonably empathetic in these situations and not non-judgmental, because I've done stupid, mean, dark thing. Maybe not. Yeah, maybe dark things. Who knows? One of the things he said is that he consciously didn't pick his daughter up from school one day to spite his ex-wife, and so his daughter, who was 8, was left there on her own. Like, and I was like, okay, I could see why someone would have shame from that. And so we wrote it all down, and then I was like, right, it was on the magic whiteboard paper. Right, let's get up. And he's like, what? And I was like, take it off. And he's like, what? I was like, put it on as a cape. And he's literally just like, what the fuck? He wasn't, because he was being coached. He's like, I was like, we're going to the supermarket.
I know where you got this from. Yeah.
And then we went to the supermarket, and this was in Malta, and he was walking around with like a cape with about 20 things written down, numbered. And then I was like, we started stopping old Maltese ladies and asking them for a number from 1 to 20. And they obviously were a bit tripped out what the hell was going on. And then they'd be like 6, and I'd be like, turn around, and I'd ask the Maltese lady to read what it said. And then there was like a little bit of a sort of kerfuffle at the beginning, at the on the tills as we were walking out. People were like, "What's going on?" They're all chatting away. And they were like, "What are you?" In their funny Maltese accents, they're like, "What are you do? What were you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh," and I explained. I was like, "We're a coach. I'm a coach, and this is my client and stuff." And then I was like, "Turn around," and then they all started reading it. There's like 5 of these old Doris, well, the equivalent of Maltese Dorises. And then we walked out, and then I was like, "How are you feeling?" And he was just like relieved, like lighter. And I was like, what do you want to do with this cape? And he's like, I want to put it in the bin. And I was like, why do you think we did it? And he's like, I can see, like, the shame of this thing that he had by like showing the world and telling the world, and it lightened the load for him. And I'm like, from what you said there, you're never going to get that from AI.
No, that's really...
I'm just curious about it.
I always wanted to know the mechanics of that exercise, because I know where it's from. I just like, and I was like, I'll have to ask you later about that, because it's like, I'm going to use that exercise. But I never.
I'll tell you the reason I used it is I did this with a coach, and this was very odd. We were in a like a sort of music-y type, sort of multimedia studio-y place where they did like films and stuff like that, and it was very cool and in East London. And I did the same thing, and he's like, right, let's go. And I'll try and describe it. We walked out of his office and we went to these spiral stairs, and down there was noise, people in the coffee shop, and he's like, we're going to Sainsbury's. And I still to this day don't know the answer to this. And I stood at the top of the stairs, and I literally could not move. I couldn't do it. And I was like, and it's hard to, I guess it's freeze or flight or whatever. And I don't know to this day whether what he did was what he planned all along, or he was like, okay, this is a bit more fucked up than I thought. Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't step down the stairs. And then I just felt like this, whatever it was, just stopped me, frozen. And then after what felt like about 3 minutes, which probably wasn't, I was like, okay. And then I went to put my foot down the stairs, and he was like, okay, I just wanted to know whether you would do it. And we went back into the office. And I don't know if he didn't, I don't know if that was his plan all along, or he's never had someone literally that stuck and just was like, this is probably too much for someone to experience in one go. If he can't put a foot down one step, go into Sainsbury's. We didn't get anywhere near Sainsbury's. I found that incredibly revealing. And so that's why I did. My client wasn't quite so... I mean, he was like, all right, let's do it. Obviously, there was a little bit more deeper embedded with me of the shame. I can't even remember what I wrote on it. Go on, your question was, though, you were saying that...
That's a really... it's a great... Those exercises, those experiences, I love delivering them. That's what I live for. Like those moments of transformation. Like you just like I would say they're like a before and after. They're an instant. Like, you know, both of us came from the body transformation world, and we would help someone over 12 weeks become a before and after. You would see that. And I think that, you know, even just listening to you then, is that what I love now is watching that can happen in an instant. Like, when I've really helped someone and do that in an instant, that's my biggest payoff as a coach. And I just share, like, could be helpful for anyone listening as well. Actually, is like, we ran the Awaken Man for 3 years, and one of the things that we did was we did the eulogy exercise, which someone would come to the retreat, and I created a retreat, and they would read their own eulogy. And there was 2 types of eulogy we did. We did what I call a eulogy and a reverse eulogy, and it depended on the person, and like they would either write their eulogy as it would be read on their deathbed when they deceased, when they 80 or whatever. And then some guys would be literally there crying and just seeing how far away they were from that. That was really powerful. And you just saw the lights come on for guys. They were like, I am so far away from living like this man. And that helped them. And then the other one was the reverse eulogy, which was if you died tomorrow and someone had to write the honest shortcomings of your current situation, honestly, what would they write? And that was an equally powerful wake-up call. You'd get guys talking about how they were just so out of integrity. They were like, they knew that they could be better. And it just highlighted all the bits that they wanted to work on. And they were just tools, but you would see the instant shift from guys, because they were just living so unconsciously to that reality that one day they were going to die. And I just loved that. I know I was speaking to a men's coach, and actually they have them even dig their own grave and do that exercise.
Wow.
And I think that's what going back to like what's been the thread for all of this is like transformation. This is just an insight for me as we're talking. I loved that transformation in someone over 12 weeks, watching how different that person was. And now I have seen moments over the last couple of years where people have just, even after one call, they're like, that call changed my life. That one call, that one conversation, that one perspective was an exponential shift. And that kind of where the 10x stuff came in. But
yeah, tell me about that. Where did that all start?
It was good. It was really interesting, actually, because when I ran Awakened Man, one of the things that there were what was the common theme, what I loved the most, I loved the men's work side because I was going through my own men's work journey. I discovered men's work. I found it very, very helpful. But the core thing was helping guys recreate an impossible goal, putting the North Star back in the sky. So when you and I first met, Tim, I had this North Star goal of having my gym and getting married and having money, and that was like, it drove me. And then I achieved all those things, and then I lost all those things, and like I lost them in style, like in the space of like a month or 2. And so my gym got really unstable. I lost my wife. You didn't lose her. It sounded like I went on a journey and lost her. She turned to me one day and said, "Don't want to be with you anymore." Even my fitness was just not in a good place. So I was like, all the things that I had always worked for just went overnight. And for the next 2 years, I didn't really put goals back in the sky. I didn't really have that kind of guiding.
You know why?
Goal.
You know why people don't?
Go for it, yeah.
No, I'm asking, do you know why people don't in those situations?
I think for me, it was to protect myself. I was like, I'd always look forward, but then all of a sudden I started just, my truth for that was that I just didn't want to show up. I was so embarrassed. I was so in shame. I just kind of played safe. Totally over-calibrated. I stopped coaching people because I felt out of integrity. I was like, how can I coach someone around their business, their relationship, their life when my life was a mess? So I just ran my gym for 2 years. But then I started to feel really lost. And then what I realised was that this kind of like impossible goal that I'd always had I didn't have anymore, and then so I created this men's group, and I had this idea of building the men's group to multi-millions and serving serving a whole bunch of men, and that made me change. It made me change, like leading a men's group, all that sort of stuff. I remember when Yassine and I, who we started the men's group together, he was like, "Oh yeah, no, we can do it together." And I was like, "I am in no place to lead a men's group. I have an unhealthy relationship with porn. My relationship's not in a good position. I'm not making the money that I want to make." And he goes, "That's precisely why you need to do it. You need to close all those gaps." And I was like, "Yeah, that's so right." So having that impossible goal again changed my life. I got back on the horse, so to speak, and it changed my life. And I realized, looking back, the biggest shift I've ever seen in anyone is when they've put that kind of 10x North Star goal back in the sky. And I'd done loads of like reading around 10x goals, impossible goals. What's his name? Donald Miller talks about the hero's journey and your impossible goal. And then I just started following Ben Hardy's work. And then I worked for a coach in the States called Hannah, and she gave all of her mastermind this book called 10x is easier than 2x. Have you read 10x is easier than 2x? It's a masterpiece. It is a real masterpiece of a book. And
By who? Sorry.
By Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. I read it and I was like, you definitely probably had this. You have like moments of conscious competence, unconscious competence. He's like, "Oh, I've been doing this for years, but just not as aligned as this." And so I thought, you know what? I left Awakened Man, and I'm going to start teaching people how to do this 10x is easier than 2x stuff. And it was the same stuff I'd always taught, but just in there was a lot more frameworks and a lot more models to use. And it was powerful, like just having a really, really clear 10x goal. And it's just been a journey. And I'm on that journey myself. I'm still using the principles, and the principles have helped me, be successful as a coach.
How did you deal with the tumultuous ups and downs for the last 3 months? Because obviously you live in Dubai. How did that? Well, number one, how did it feel when it all kicked off? And by the way, I've heard that you're not allowed to say shit, and you're not allowed to put pictures and videos on the internet, otherwise they put you in the jail. So, like,
I think I can be an honest account of what happened.
I guess just quickly, Ben. Like, I think we know what happened, but what I'm interested in is like how did you feel in those moments, and how then did you react?
Oh,
that must have been hard.
Yeah, dude, I'm going to be very, very honest. I'd heard about Trump going to go to war with Iran, and then not thought much of it. But then it was kicking off one day. Poppy was out in the marina on an event, and I was with the kids, and we live next to the airfield, right? So where they're launching all the missiles to intercept the drones and the things, which is been done in incredible fashion, all of a sudden I heard a boom, boom. The windows shook in my house, and I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know that was an interceptor missile. I thought the airbase had been hit, because there was no way that the windows could shake that much from something just going off. And I cried. I had a little like moment where my body froze. I cried. I rang my dad, as you always do. the ultimate, I was like, "Dad, what do I do?" I think that the airbase next to me is under attack, and he just says, "Just get inside and just just make sure you're safe." And anyway, I learned pretty quickly by going online that they were interceptors, and it was very, very visceral, a very visceral experience. And then, as I learned over the next couple of days about what was going on and how good a job, the Dubai government was leading the people through, it made sense that all the bangs and all that stuff was just these interceptions. In terms of leaving Dubai, we didn't leave Dubai. We left just last 2 weeks for a holiday, but we're going back on Sunday. It's a very, very interesting, surreal experience. But there's still people there doing business. Everyone's still moving on and keep going. So it's a very strange, very COVID-esque experience where there's this existential problem that everyone acknowledges. At the same time, you're still trying to move on with your life and not get too wrapped up in this. And I think that's what I did in COVID with my gym really, really well. There was this existential problem that closed my gym, but I still had to strategize on how to run my business. And I think you're going to have that in.
Was there any frustration at any point? Because I saw you doing lots of retreats and that. Like I was like, oh shit! I kind of remember seeing it. I was like, I didn't think about it straight away, and then I was like, oh
Yeah.
shit! Like, good luck, Ben, getting people coming over there now.
Yeah, it was yeah, no, all the so I actually ethically I told all the people that were flying over to just consider what they are flying into. People have cancelled, people have equally still said, "Oh, I'm okay to come," and I'm just saying, listen, and I'm just going to paint exactly where what's going on, so you have all the information. Under no circumstances am I saying that you have to come to this, because I think ethically, getting someone to fly into a war zone or a conflict or anything that you want to call it is like, yeah, it's. So I still have to run it because I've paid so much money for the event station and stuff like that. But it was it just means you have to be agile, and I think you have to learn that skill in business. You just I think we learned that in COVID. Like my gym had finally started making around about 8 to 12, maybe sometimes 15 grand of profit a month on month, and we were doing really well, and we were about 6-7 months in, and then COVID happened, and then it just totally wiped the gym out. And so it was kind of like I'd spent 10 years trying to get this machine to work the way I wanted it to, and consistently, like I'd had massive months in the past and then massive crashes after that, but consistently we were doing really well, and then COVID happened to the gym. But we pivoted the gym, and we ended up having a consultancy business which did corporate wellness. And it's the same with this business now. I think you've got to be agile in these times, right?
It's interesting. Do you look back at like the version of you that was doing his boot camps then? Because there's quite a big gap here. Like this kind of conversation about like business and how high level it is, and then you all the way back doing like celebrating that you were earning £3,000 a month in a boot camp.
Yeah, gosh, yeah. I actually saw a picture of because I was going through photos last night of all mentors, and I'd looked at. There's a picture of me with Phil Richards. So with Phil Richards for 2-3 years as like an understudy, and I look at myself and I'm this skinny little 22-year-old, fresh faced, no stubble, and yeah, my wins then were very different to the ones now. And I look back at that guy, and the thought of him charging, 25, 50k for a deal was, that wasn't even in my wheelhouse thought space. I could never even imagine that.
What do you think makes the difference? Like, because we both come from the same arena, so this is not disrespectful to anyone, but there's, for every 10,000 people that are delivering some boot camps and working in the gym, there's not a lot of them that end up, making the progression that you or some others have. Like, what do you think makes the difference?
The size of the problem you solve.
But I mean, individually for you, like, why were you the one that ended up making such progression and not everyone else?
Yeah, just constantly not wanting to be stationary. I don't know. I just had this, constantly wanting to progress, constantly going deeper. This is great question. What is the thing? I think the thing is aspirational identity, like aspiring to be a more influential person in someone's life, wanting to help them solve bigger things. And yeah, I probably haven't got a good answer for that. What about you? What do you think's made you succeed from being a PT to what you do now?
I think a lot of people are often at first it's a move away from pain, whatever that is. Like, I think that's the thing that drives people at first, often. It certainly did with me, although maybe I wasn't aware of it. Like, when I get to X, I'll be Y, which is really good. Like you said earlier, one thing that I was thinking about it is I was doing a little bit of journaling recently, and I'm like, had a big goal, had a big business, and it's like, just sometimes I feel like the drive isn't as there like it was at one point. And then it's like, well, is that because you've already achieved it and doing the same thing again just doesn't have the same sort of excitement? Maybe that's something to do with it. But then I was also like, you know, were there times where I was more unhappy when, in fact, this is interesting because I knew this anyway, the month or few months where we earned the most, and I mean like 150k months, while I was balling it up in Colombia, spending 10 grand on 3 months of rent, which, by the way, like, I just chose the one place in Medellin that they wouldn't rent it monthly. It was per night. It was literally like 5 times as expensive as everything else. I was just like, I've got the money, I'm going to be a baller, why not? I want this place and I don't really care that I have to pay 10 grand for it. Everywhere else would have been like 3 or 4 and it would have been really nice. They were like a 9 or an 8 and this was just happened to be a 9. I was like, I don't care, I've got the money, just throwing money at stuff. And I remember being there for like, this was over COVID, and I remember when I left, I was like, I was probably the most unhappy that I've been. Like, it was COVID, and then it was Christmas, and I didn't know because I didn't have like connections to the Colombian government or the news or whatever. I just knew some Colombians that I'd met that would tell me they just decide to just do lockdowns, like little mini lockdowns, and you're not allowed out. If you get caught out on the street, you have to like bribe people or whatever it is, and there's all these little ways around it. And it's like, right, no one's going out for 3 days over Christmas. And I was like, oh, you're not allowed out of your house. And I was like, I mean, I wasn't loads anyway, but I would still go out, maybe to the gym or meet people, etc. And I was like, right. And then so I was just like, I just didn't feel very good, very happy. And it was weird because I'd achieved all the things that I wanted. And then I was like, still don't feel very happy, which was very strange. And then I was like, I did the Teal Swan work for like 3 days, literally just sort of half meditation, half asleep, half deep work for like 3 days. That's pretty much what I did. And so I think that often, even to those levels, it can be a move away from pain. I don't think it's a good strategy, by the way. I don't think it's a good strategy because it's like, well, when is it going to be enough? So I think there was a little bit of that. I think if you look at like your background as a professional sportsman, I wonder whether a lot of people who end up as elite, you know, are they just driven by some sort of pleasure? I don't know. I mean, have you listened to Johnny Wilkinson's stuff in the last 2 years, 3 years?
No, no, I haven't. But I do know, like, there's like a thought that I've been processing over the last couple of months that I've talked to a few people in our frame of life, and my 20s, early 30s were driven by fear. I know it was. Like, that's
when I
the way.
I would say that I mean the same thing, like
Yeah,
fear, moving
yeah.
away, like not good enough, that kind of thing.
Had this massive kind of shame-based fear that I didn't know enough. So I just read everything. You know, I was like, oh, I don't know enough. I'm not enough of a specialist, not enough of an expert. I don't know as much as this guy. I want to know more than Tim. I want to know more than, I wanted to know more than. So it was like, it was fear-based. And it might have been psilocybin, which was a big shift for me. It might have been just my kids being born, my daughters. Like, I think what happened was there was almost like a shift in my energy, as in not my energy as in like my energy, but my fuel source. I was fueled by fear and not enoughness in my early 20s and early 30s, and then there was like a baton exchange which I've experienced over the last couple of years, which even now it feels so different. I've come from a lot more of a loving place, a desire-based place. And going back to Glenn, he was the first person that really showed me this kind of desire or fear based fuel for people's transformations. And it's funny how this is tying all together. He's very, very good at teaching that when you were selling. It's like, you get people to get really clear on the desire, and then you show them their fear, and they normally buy from one of those fuels. And I think what's happened for me over the last, say, since I was like 35, I've become more and more loving, more and more, like more slow, much slower because of my kids. And that has given me a much bigger capacity, because I think that's what happens, is that fear and anger, which was driving me for a big part of my business, it was like, it burns fast, it burns hot, it feels good, but it burns you out. And I think that in middle age, be it 35, 45, 55, whenever your middle age is, you do need to make that transition, or you just genuinely do burn out. I think there is that kind of second mountain, what you have. And I was speaking to a number of guys about this, and they were like, yeah, absolutely, this is exactly what's going on for me now. But they're not in the, I'm not used to this kind of fuel source. I'm not used to this desire. I'm not used to like being really loving and slow and gentle instead of the opposite. And that's what I've been acclimatizing to over the last couple of years.
Like you said, like sometimes have the conversation, like, if I hadn't worked with Glenn, what would have the outcome? I mean, it's a counterfactual that you can never know, but it's like, would I have still seen some success? I'm like, I don't know. Like, would I have found another coach? Maybe. I was clearly on the lookout for help and coaches. Could the other coach have been better? I don't know. Like, so like when you say, I'm just curious about like what is it that makes you the one in 1,000? Like, is it something that's innate? Can anyone do it? Like, if I asked you that, do you think that anyone, in fact, a better question, do you think anyone can become conscious? Do you think anyone can, or do you think it's only accessible to some people?
Yeah, this is gosh, I was listening to the Michael Pollan on Joe Rogan the other day, and he was talking about consciousness, and I had that exact same thought. It's like, can everybody become conscious? And
what did he say?
He didn't answer the question. I had that thought while listening. I'd be interested to that's a really good question. It's almost like, can anyone get fit? And some people have so many. This is my thoughts on it. So many people have so many layers and beliefs and patterns that you have to. Like, I had a client who was 10 stone overweight, maybe more, 15 stone overweight, and for him to get to the point where he was even going to continuously lose weight, he had to get rid of so many behaviours and patterns and thinkings and paradigms. It was almost like an impossible task. Could he have ended up being fit? Yes. But the journey was so long. He had to go through so many things and change so many things just to get even to the point where he could be consistent, was so far. And I think it's the same with consciousness. There's so many people with so many beliefs, conditioning, paradigms, whatever you want to call it. There's such a big journey that they have to go before they could become conscious. So yes, I believe it's possible, but I think the journey length is different.
I had this conversation with Ali quite a lot about it, and we sort of swapped. It was a podcast with Candice. Do you know who Candice Owens is? Yeah. Anyone listening, she seems to have gone off on tangents more recently, but she had a conversation with Russell Brand. And it's interesting because I'm in that sort of school, like, what you get out is what you put in. It's like much more sort of internal locus of control. But then Russell Brand just kept bringing her back, and she didn't quite get it, or didn't want to get it, or whatever it was. And she was like, well, I did it. I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, which is my energy, which is what I believe. And then he just kept coming back and going, yeah, but you could do this. You're intelligent, you're charismatic, you have all of this ability. And he's like, what about the people that don't have that? And I was sitting there, I was like, oh, how does that work with my beliefs that anyone can do this? Anyone, and it's not, is it anyone that can do this? A locus of control. Like, if you have an internal locus of control, you can create the outcomes you want. But then he kept challenging. I was like, yeah, actually, maybe. And I had this conversation a few times with Ali, and then eventually she was like, I've changed my mind. I don't think that anyone does have access to this.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny because I don't know, you had the same thing as you'd sit in front of people trying to get fit, and genuinely you have these two kind of positions. Like, I really want it for you. I want this to happen for you. But there's also this belief that you are so far from this and you cannot do this. And especially the way that you're being in this transformation. I remember people who would be like, yeah, I want it. I want to transform my body. And then just that belief that you're so far from what you're trying to talk about. And it's the same with business. But what I found really interesting is that corporate people, so people in like corporate positions, see a C-suite position, they come in and they try and start their own business. They're terrible. They are absolutely terrible. They do not behave like entrepreneurs. They are riddled with fear. They are perfectionists. There's so much. They're just not the same. I thought they would be like absolute A players, and it's not been my experience at all. It's the hustlers. It's the entrepreneurs. It's people like even trainers and people like that. They're the ones who will go and do stuff. Even tradespeople, because they're grafters, whereas sometimes the people that come out of a corporate environment, they have such a long way to go when it comes to building their own business off their own back.
Do you find coaching women and men different?
Very different, yeah, very different.
Go on.
I would say it's more. I wouldn't say it's more gender. It's more energy, like masculine, feminine, like masculine women and feminine women, and same with men. I think that has a massive, like how they show up and get stuff done. The thing I've always found with women is they're more task oriented. Like I found this in the weights room when I used to work with, Amy Bolden, who's a golfer, Rach, she was a sprinter, Rianne, who's a triathlete. They were all world class. And they were just really, really diligent with the technique, and they were consistent. Whereas the men that I had were more ego-oriented. They cared more about what was on the bar. So if you're to assume that champions are made through consistency, women always had a better disposition for that, I think, because their ego was a little bit more, it wasn't running the show, whereas men, it was. Whereas with men, I think you can, I don't know, I actually enjoy coaching women. I really enjoy coaching women. That's why I went back to coaching women after working in Awaken Man, because I enjoyed coaching women. Because sometimes you have a good conversation with a female entrepreneur.
You enjoy it because of the variety, or you enjoy it because it's different?
Just different, yeah. I enjoy it because I don't think the question you asked is it different? Yes, it's different. But do I have any more enjoyment from either? Not at all. I love working with both.
Do you find it harder coaching men or women?
No, not really. I don't have any. That's a really good question, but no, I don't. I find it just different. It's not harder.
So, coaches. Sorry, let's change that. By the way, I'll give you a couple of an example of this. When I did my, it was like a master's level diploma in what they called personal and business coaching. Is worth a third of a master's. It was because of that. It had to be academic. So you got like is it ICF or something like that, like certificate. But you also had to do academic work to fulfill the ability to get the credits for the masters. So I'm sure they might have done that anyway. And so some of the days where you went, because you did weekends like meetups, you would have to go into all the academic stuff, and some of it was a bit wanky. And you spent like half a day or a day like defining what coaching was. And I was just like, oh man, this is just fucking long. I just was like, this is so what was it? It felt a little bit like up your ass. I was like, oh, this is so like, and then so when I try and explain this to people, especially like personal trainers, like what I think coaching is, I'm like, oh, Tim, you're being like these academics, like stop being so wanky. But at the same time, I think because of the phrases of people are like, oh, I do coach. I would have said I coached people in the gym. I didn't. Like, although I did, because I was like, I coached exercise. I cued exercise well. A little bit of that was like brand and ego as well, because so did the people that were just saying, I'm just said personal training. There's me going, I'm a coach. So we have to not be too wanky about this. And it's like, so if we agree that there is a difference between training people and then coaching them in the perspective of what you do now, although that's obviously outside of the fitness industry and it's more other type of coaching than coaching with an outcome that is losing weight, transformation, health, fitness, that kind of thing. But we could still understand that there is a modality to change that, which is more coaching. Dax, I think, would have called it mindset, maybe. I think maybe didn't he call it mindset? His program was called something like that. I kind of
Mike called it Mind Map, his program.
yeah, and so I was like, we coined it like more like behavior change coaching, but of course there's a difference between the word mindset and behaviors and habits, but lots of people use them slightly synonymously anyway, right? So looking back, like if someone is in the gym and they don't even know what the hell mindset coaching is, coaching the way that me and you are using it without sounding like these dick academics, like how does someone make that move, and why would they? Like if you were convincing your old self that was doing the boot camps that before Dax and that, like why would someone even want to do that, and how would they do that?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult for me to do this because I've always had coaches from like I'm 17 years old.
But the coaches originally would they have coached you, or was it like they were telling you how to? Because I know your background, they were telling you like do these sprints, do this technique. Was it that, or was it?
Yeah, this is
mindset coaching.
I never needed a mindset coach, so to speak.
I mean, again, that's why the word is butchered, because I don't think it means what people think it might mean.
Yeah, it's really interesting is that I didn't ever need a mindset coach. I had a skills coach or a trainer. I went to Tony Robbins when I was 18 years old, and I was like, wow, there's this like whole dynamic of things that I just didn't have any idea about.
Why did you go to see him then? What was the reason?
Because I had so this is interesting. I had a business, so I had a personal training client who owned a business, and he said, Ben, if you give me abs like yours, I'll be your coach. I'll be your business coach, and I'll help you turn what you're doing into a business. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. You know, so he said, like, well, tell you what we'll do is we'll go to Tony Robbins. We'll go Tony Robbins together. So we went to Tony Robbins together, and I was just like, wow, this whole world of like mindset and stuff existed that I just didn't even understand. And it just really contrasted what I'd always understood as coaching, and you know, I just thought it was a load of nonsense. It was when Tony Robbins was still peddling the acid alkaline diet. So you got Robert O. Young's book, I think it's Robert Young's book about the pH diet, and it was just kind of like, you know, I definitely disagreed with all that stuff, but even though I tried it, but all it did is it opened up all these things, these levels of thinking that I just didn't know existed. And it was like a kid in a sweet shop. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many levels to this. So I think one of the problems that a lot of these people have is they're just not being exposed to this kind of thinking and its uses. So I would coach people whilst I was training them. Like there would be bits between the sets.
What would that look like? Like what would actually happen?
So we just talk about their life and, you know, the ways of thinking that could help them with that thing in their life. And then, you know, a lot of clients would go, oh, I really like our chats, Ben. They wouldn't know how to even frame it. And like, even if they were to tell other people about it. They would never be able to say, "Oh, Ben's my coach." They would just say, "Oh yeah, he's got some good things that he says," and they were just never really able to, especially in North Wales, where we talk about the land that time forgot. Really, that's it. But the valuable thing was that I was helping them use different paradigms to come to their problems. I was helping them think differently about their life, and that's the bit that they found most valuable. And I think that a lot of trainers don't or haven't been exposed to that. That's the main thing, that they just never had that exposure. So going back to that original question, is like what made me is like I was constantly exposing to myself to these deeper levels, broader levels, more complicated, if not simpler ways of thinking that a lot of trainers weren't. They still thought it was just about calories and macros and burpees.
And what's the benefit, do you think? Why? We're on the same boat here, clearly, by the way. We've
Yeah.
known that for like 12 years. But what do you think is the benefit of someone deciding to expose themselves, or like, why is it beneficial to their clients?
I think the biggest thing is that they have a bigger capacity to hold life in, really. Like, I think that what I would say for myself is that I'm in this position now where there's not many things that happen in my life which I can't deal with in a rational fashion. I've got such a big capacity. So that's what my first thought is, that it makes your stress bucket bigger, or it makes the stress that comes into your bucket tap off a little bit more, because you're not, like, I think about my mum and my dad, a small amount of stress in their life and they're totally triggered, it's a big problem, and they deal with it in a physical way, or in a way that they react to it. And I came from that parenting where everything was massively stressful. Any change, any struggle, anything interpersonal was such a big thing for my parents. So now, like, I wanted to have such a big capacity for stress that nothing phases me. And I think that's what a lot of people want and need, is just like a bigger capacity to deal with stress.
Okay, and then so if I'm a fitness client, like, by the way, my opinion is, like, it's hard to sell this stuff as a personal trainer because the end user doesn't really know what that means, and that it's the problem. Lots of personal trainers market themselves as, like, I do mindset. So I'll give you an example. I'm listening to a sales call of one of my clients, loving Barry, and then in the close he starts talking about mindset and coaching models. I'm like, what do you think the person thinks at that point? Do they know what that means? And I was like, no. And I was like, what's the rules? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, don't introduce new concepts in the close, because you're just confusing the person. So now you're telling them the thing you're going to help them with, and you start going, and every week you'll have a coaching model because we need to do mindset. And the person's sitting there going, yes, mindset, yes, yeah, mindset, yes. But then if I literally interjected and I somehow could come into their Zoom call and went to Barry, just for the moment, Barry's from Ireland, so Seamus, who's his prospect, Seamus, what does mindset mean? Seamus would not know. He would say little fluffy words and try and then eventually I'd either interject or he'd have to go, yeah, I don't really know what it means. So it's like, don't introduce this stuff in the close so that they don't know what it is. And it's like, so I think it's very hard to sell mindset. It sounds good, like when I'm a fitness coach that's done it a little bit. Oh, and I help you with your mindset. Yes, I need your mindset. What does mindset mean? I don't know. Like, they literally, like, they do, but they don't. So I think it's hard for personal trainers to sell this stuff without putting it in context, without telling stories, etc. But I also think there's a stage before that where personal trainers just themselves don't see it as beneficial. So it's like a client or someone needs to have a bigger capacity to deal with stress. But why does that affect a personal trainer and helping a client? Is it that because the client doesn't have that capacity, they sit there and munch on donuts every day or drink too much wine? Or, like, how does it actually play out in an end user's situation? How did it play out in your end user situations? Because I agree with what you said. I imagine between sets, what you're doing is instead of chatting about the football or the rugby or like mothers' meetings, you're actually like asking them questions, but they don't know that you are, and you're helping them sort of come to some conclusions and breakthroughs. But that's the language me and you use and would understand. I wouldn't have known what that meant and why you would even do that. I agree with you with the Tony Robbins thing. I was just like, who's this gash American on Oprah? And it used to literally viscerally give me this reaction of like, oh fuck it, the fuck is that shite? Like, partly America, I love Americans now, but like partly it was like, fucking the matter with him. And I mean, with Tony Robbins, not them as Americans. And so, let's say your example that clients don't have a good capacity for stress, and then a personal trainer learns how to help them have a bigger one. Like, how does that affect the work that they do with their clients, their transformations, their results?
Yeah. I think the biggest shift for me was that clients would stay with me for longer because they saw it as so much more than just a prescription of fitness and a meal plan. I'm really oversimplifying it. So that I became an integral part of their life. You know, they would have me as a confidant, as a coach, as a friend. And the other thing as well is that I think that when you are working with people that are higher performing, you having the skill set to hold those kind of conversations means that you can actually work with wealthier clients, because they're not just wasting time in the gym just doing a workout. They're actually having a session which can be really valuable to them in their life. So I think the biggest kind of the biggest shift for a lot of my clients back in the fitness world is they would talk about their business problems, and I would be able to offer them insights or ways of thinking that could help them out of the way that they were currently doing that. So that they were like, oh, do you know what? I tried that thing you said, and it helped with such and such in my business. So then I'm more valuable to that client. So the biggest value it can add to a personal trainer is that they can A, work with better clients, making more money, and B, keep those clients for longer, which is kind of the two essentials really. So that's because most of my PT clients I had for 4 or 5 years, and the only reason that they stopped was because they either moved away or died. It's
working with all the people in North Wales.
Yeah, but they were wealthy. They were wealthy, and they wanted to get healthy, and they enjoyed those conversations. So yeah, I think if you're a personal trainer and you're only ever having low-level conversations that other people can have, you're going to have the same clients as everyone else and be competing in the same pools. So that's why I think that much more high-level conversation, conscious conversation, had its value.
What are you excited about? Last big question, like what are you excited about going forward?
So I've most excited about. So I've taken about 2 years to get to this point where my goal is clear. So it's taken me about 2 years to get to what am I really building? What am I really building? What am I really passionate about? What do I really want to do? And I've got there now, and I'm really more clear than ever. So that's really exciting. I'm actually really excited about being a beginner in this very fast changing marketing economy, because I've just totally kind of just ejected myself from it for a couple of months.
Did you say marketing economy?
Yeah, like making content and finding your right platform, finding your voice. I actually feel probably the same place as when we first met. As like
I've seen a big improvement, by the way. I did message you and say like it's looking really good.
Thank you, man. Yeah, thank you very much. It means a lot. It's like I believed I was very good at training people, but I just didn't know how to communicate my message when we first met. And I'm back again in that same place now. I'm very good at what I do. I'm not doing too good a job of communicating how good I am at that or what I can do. And so when I get that right, that's when I've seen big shifts in the past. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Right, and how can people? What's your favorite? What's your platform of choice then? We'll get some details and that to put in the show notes. But now I'll put you on the spot. Where's the best place for people to come and find you?
That's even a question in itself. Like, where do you want to hang out? Is like, I love do not love LinkedIn. It's Instagram. I just find Instagram's quite like a nice platform to be on. I enjoy it personally, so I'm showing up on there a lot. So it's Coach Benjamin Owen on Instagram, and I don't write on Facebook anymore. You know, Tim, that's interesting. I just found it was just. I used to be a big Facebook guy, but I just find that I'm going to move all of my efforts that I was making on Facebook and stuff out and make it onto YouTube, so I can have more things that people can go back and look over.
That was going to
Yeah,
be my second question on that. It's like, where's long form? Where can people binge? What are they doing?
yeah, YouTube. So YouTube and Instagram are my kind of 2026 onwards places to hang out.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Ben. This was fun.
Yeah, me too, man. I enjoyed that. Thank you, Tim.